All right, we are breaking down the Skylar Richardson case. My name is Bob Bianchi. I'll be here to 3 o'clock, and you know if this is the Law and Crime Network, for a certainty, this is gavel-to-gavel coverage and guests with a tremendous amount of experience, real life, real hardcore experience that can really break down this case for us. Now, this is really a fascinating one, and we have been debating it behind the scenes, left and right, and we've been in the chat room listening to the people and watching everything that they're commenting on. It looks like a really tough road for the prosecution at this point in view, unless there's some other smoking gun evidence. Obviously, we'll have to wait to see that. But the defendant's confession, or by the way, may I say statement, because it's not necessarily a confession, maybe it is, maybe it's not, is going to be one of the most powerful pieces of evidence for the prosecution. And by all estimations, at least from our chatters, that statement didn't really convince them of the defendant's guilt. Let's take a look. Okay, wow, amazing. So, Professor, we are deigned with the greatness of Gene Rossi, a law and crime legal analyst. Been on the show with him so many times. We know a number of things about him. He was a great basketball player back in the day. He loves polenta. He's trained over 1,000 prosecutors, 30 years at the DOJ. Gene Rossi, I'm told also you tweeted something out recently, had the word indomitable in it. I don't know what you're saying.
I read the dictionary, Bob, and I got to the I's, and I got to indomitable, and I saw your photo next to the word.
Yes, people were telling me that I'm the indomitable host. It's like the abominable snowman. Anyway, hey, Gene, let me ask you, we were talking with the professor before about this read technique, okay? And there's no perfect way to do an interview, but one thing that's really crucial, especially when you have a confession, pretty much or statement-only case, I'm going to keep calling it a statement rather than a confession, is that you either have corroborating evidence that supports what it is that the person is saying, or especially if you don't have that, that the jury doesn't feel that there was as the professor used, I love it, a David and Goliath situation. You have this frail, young, 18-year-old girl is emotionally distraught, but when they come up to char in that body, she is definitive about no, nothing, not possible. They ask about the fire pit. No, they're like, well, we have evidence. They throw out that we have evidence that this was done, and we're just trying to figure out. And basically she's saying, I'm not making it up. I didn't have anything to do with it. But after a while, have you found in your career, if you want to, if you're long enough and you got a young person, especially a juvenile, and you're using techniques like the read technique, that you can break somebody down to give a false confession? Question 2, will he call an expert about the read technique, the defense?
I would call an expert. That's the answer to question 2. On question 1, here's what troubles me about the interview. The detective, God bless her heart, she is talking too much. She's really just overbearing the will of that frail, pathetic-looking teenager, Skylar. And you know, obviously Skylar is in total shock being interviewed. She's in total shock about what happened. And to just make statements and hope she bites on them, I don't think that was a very good interview. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, and I don't think that, listen, you're certainly consistent with what the chatters are saying at the Law and Crime Network, and I think basically, Professor, what me and you have been talking about a little bit, because it was too leading, it was too accusatory. You got to look at your defendant. You're not dealing with a gang member here. You interview that witness a little bit different than you do a girl like this, because you know somewhere down the line, the jury is going to be looking at this, and the visceral just look of the whole thing. 2 police officers, this 18-year-old girl, vulnerable, and they keep going at her over and over again with this read technique. I've literally seen, have you, individuals who wind up giving a false statement simply because they either want to get out of the room or actually become convinced, well, I must have charred the body somehow.
Oh, absolutely. You can convince a subject of the truth. Now, I'm not saying that's absolutely what happened here, but certainly, and the less sophisticated the subject, the more likely that can happen. Now, without Monday morning quarterbacking completely, I always like to err on the side of getting my subject talking, and then I could use follow-up questions to confirm or to get them an opportunity to change information. But get them talking a little bit more first. Just as Gene pointed out, the detectives are running the conversation here, and you see what happens. There comes a point where she's adamantly denying, no, 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 no. Then if she recants later on, well, what about those no's? it becomes a little bit confusing.
Yeah, absolutely. Great analysis here, Professor. Thank you very much, Gene Rossi. You can't get two better guests like you do all the time here at the Law and Crime Network. When we're covering these cases gavel to gavel, the confession in this case is what is important. We cannot underestimate that at all. So you, the ones who are watching the show, you, the audience, you tell me, based upon these statements and the next clip we're going to show, has the prosecution proved to you that she's giving truthful statements, although the statements are all over the place? And because they're all over the place, which one part of the statement do you believe or not believe? I don't know. Let's go look at another clip. All right, Professor, I mean, this is kind of, there's, again, a lot to unpack here, but what's clear is that there is no forensic evidence to support the fact that there was any kind of burning, not to mention the common sense part of this, that with a lighter, you are not going to set a body on fire. And I just want to ask, so I want you to comment on that, but you know, before there was something that came out during the testimony where the lead detective was allowed to say, without objection, shocking to me, that the parents basically say that the defendant is a liar, or whatever word, that's the word that was used. Well, does that, at first I thought that was outrageous, it wasn't objected to, but I guess maybe the defense can argue, what can you believe? They want you to rely on the statement, and yet they admit that she's a liar. So what part of the statement do you want to believe or not believe?
Exactly. And not to mention, if she is a liar, there's one thing that's very interesting about these statements. First of all, she is adamant. I have not really heard a statement where she said, yes, the baby was alive, the baby was breathing. Every time the police bring it up, she keeps, no, baby wasn't breathing. This fire, I'll tell you what's critical about this fire. Nothing. What's critical about this fire is if the baby was alive, then this was an act of homicide. If the baby wasn't alive, at best, this is some type of violation about the improper disposal of a dead body. It will be the job of the defense to show that this fire has nothing to do with the charge of murder. It's the job of the prosecution to show that this baby was born alive. And the statements here really don't lead towards the fact that the baby was born alive.
Hey, Gene, what about the idea, just talking about juror psychology here, not saying it's right, we're saying it's wrong, but to the professor's point, a lot of people in our chat room do not believe that the government is proving its case beyond a reasonable doubt, and the statement of the defendant did not convince them at all to help the prosecution, which is a big blow to the prosecution because that statement pretty much is what's important because they don't really have any other forensic evidence. But do they go into that jury room and say, you know, I kind of think that she may not be right, but you can't prove the murder beyond a reasonable doubt, but we're just going to clip her on the improper disposal of human remains as a compromise verdict?
Absolutely. I think I said that last week. I think the jury, because of the horrific nature of this case, Annabelle, I think the baby's name was, whether she was alive or stillborn, they want to find justice for somebody. And I think they're going to compromise and say guilty on abuse of corpse and not guilty or hung on the other charges, aggravated murder. The professor brought up a good point that the defense attorneys, they need to say, okay, assuming arguendo, there is this burning, which there is not. So what? You have proved abuse of a corpse. You haven't done anything with this confession other than show that two individuals on the law enforcement side are trying to feed answers into the defendant who is scared to death and is basically, you know, in a fog during this interview.
Yeah, and speaking about feeding answers, the last thing I'll say, I love when the detective said, hey, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but, and then they went on and put words in her mouth. Okay, guys, you can't get better commentary than you got here with the professor and with Gene Rossi. Thank you guys so much. We got a lot more to cover on this case. They are on break. We got fascinating other cases that are coming up at the Law and Crime Network, because you know if you're at this network, it's multiple live trials all the time, 24/7, gavel to gavel. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.